Okay. Okay, so we have with us today Joao from Portugal, who runs a museum in Portugal for Timex Sinclair and all of Sinclair's endeavors, basically. And then we also have Jacob Bullock, who wrote a program, a paint program for the TI 99-4A, and then decided that must have decided that was not enough of a challenge. So he ported it to the TS 1000, and I bought 2 of the cassettes, and it's a real live cassette. It's called Dither Paint 81, and it lets you paint on this EX81, such as it is. Jacob, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I originally made one for the TI 99-4A. Started it on the physical machine, saved that to a cassette. I did not have a tip heat at the time either for the 99, so that was all brute force coded through Extended Basic. And then it's like, that works just fine. I've got a ZX81 with a printer. Let's get it ported over there. So I use modern tools like Notepad++, the 81 emulator to get it working, and then used the basics to machine code converter. Oh, you got the +5 health. There you go. Use that in your next adventure game. But yeah, actually, let me switch over to my program here. There we go. If we can share my screen, that'd be cool.
Yep, we see it.
Yep. So as you see, the command I have put in, I got my ZXpand plugged in. And run. Yeah. Copy paste is very helpful with modern tools with some of these. So limited by the number of characters we have, but we can get it going for sure. And yeah, so there are 5 different tile sets we got using the machine codes or the machine characters. And then I was going to use it based off the TI setup or the built-in cursor setup off the keyboard, but I needed those for the selecting of the little tiles. You can see the crosshair. I had to change a few things. Since we can't do sprite graphics through BASIC, I had to use a crosshair system is what I figured out I would do for this. And then we can just poke around, change the tile we want, fill in what we need. See, let's go with this one. Yeah, let's use 5. Let's make a little house while we're here. Why not? Yeah. Super simple. As simple as I could get it. And then hitting the P key. Yeah, we're on. We can print it out to the compatible printer.
It's like we lost your video.
It's how it does the render. It turns the CPU off to do the export. And we got, let me switch back over. And we got our little printer right here.
That's awesome.
So,
very nice.
And then if I stop it and kind of list everything, actually, go back. Actually, nope, I've already broke it. Anyway, yeah, with it being a machine code export, it kind of hides everything in the machine code backend. But yeah, there's inside the manual I provided, there is a 4K version type in program that does the same thing, that runs off the raw machine. Not quite as fast as the machine code compiled version, but nonetheless, it's a fun little program to type in just to mess around with, and also has the printing capabilities on that as well.
So, Jacob, you said compiled. What did
I
you?
use encoder for this one.
Wow. Okay.
But I had to bring it. I tried using it on the 81 emulator, but for some reason it wouldn't quite decode just right. So I brought it in onto my physical machine and ran it through there, and finally got it to work just right.
And do you still have these for sale?
I have 4 copies available. I brought them here just to make some more copies, because I figured since we got a live feed on it, there might be a few extras on there. But yeah, I've got them on my eBay store at the moment. There's 4 copies of what I have made in the past already on there. And I got some more cassettes sitting behind me somewhere to make some more if needed.
Do you have one of those cassette duplicating machines, or do you?
I do, but it's, from what I understand, it's not loud enough for it to pick up on it. So I'm having to do the old fashioned way: load it, save it, test it, pack it. But I've got, like I said, I got two ZX81 compatibles, so I can do that at least every 2 at a time. But yeah, I've got a 1 to 3 duplicator, but it's just not quite loud enough to pick up at least the ZX version of the program.
So what we need now is Stuart to restart Zebra and pick this up, right, Stu?
He just needs a duplicator that works, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear the audio and such on it, but every time I try fiddle with the volume and such, it's just starts loading and then just cuts off like it's bad data on the cassette. So
yeah,
it's just not loud enough.
So basically, it's acting like it's the 1980s. Is that right?
Yeah, good old days, right?
So who needs a stinking Amiga now?
I would imagine that tape duplicators are kind of designed to, with the ability to adjust the level, professional duplicators, so.
Yeah, I also picked mine from a church getting all their old equipment kind of out the door. So it was more designed for the audio duplication rather than the home computer cassette duplication.
Right.
So I didn't see any obvious dials when I took it apart for any volume adjustments, but it could very well just be a capacitor swap as well to change the levels. But who knows? Future project.
It may be trying to, thinking that it's music, it may be trying to make some adjustment, not expecting that you're trying to go full one into the other with the square wave.
Yeah. Well, it works for other purposes, so it'll be a future project whenever I decide to go hop back into that.
I have a question about the writing of your program, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. So after you wrote the basic portion of the program and you, I guess, compiled it to have some machine code, did you take that machine code and improve it and make it faster, or you just left it as is?
This is just straight as is, as the encoder was intended. So since it's advertised, make your basic programs run much faster. So I just did straight compile to compile. I had to change some code in the basic program so it would read like it was sort of machine code, but other than that, it's just straight 1-to-1 basic to machine code.
Yeah, encoder has some weird limitations. So does the Time Machine compiler that's for the 2068. I think they're limited to like integer variables.
Yeah, my next headache challenge is programming the same thing, exporting it to the Aquarius, the Mattel Aquarius.
Yeah.
Well, Adam would appreciate it if you would port it to the Valley Astrocade.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Do that next.
All right, send me a physical machine so I can poke around with that first.
Oh, goodness gracious! You have to ask the hardest part there. Yeah, the
Well,
Aquarius. I guess the Aquarius has a Z82, right? Yeah.
kinda. It's a weird Z80 based machine running off
Oh,
Microsoft Basic.
yeah. But I mean, the CPU is a Z80, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, hang on. Let me dig up my basic code for this thing real fast while I'm still on. Where'd I bury it? Hang on. Yeah, huh?
Speaking of volume, does anybody know where I can beg, borrow, steal a Win keyboard or have the schematic to build my own?
Hmm.
There may be a schematic somewhere, David. I'll have to do some digging. I know that there were some, AirSats designs, not Winky, specific, but similar designs. It's essentially the LED helps square up the signal and tells you that the signal level is good.
I found my code right here. So if anyone's curious at it, I got it pulled up.
Jacob, how do I find your product on eBay?
Well, my username I have on a lot of my socials is pixelmaker04.
Okay.
So just look for that, or look for Dither Paint 81 on eBay. That would be easy. I have it listed to where it's visible on the UK and the US sites. Okay. So let me see. There should be like four left that are currently copied over.
Good.
I
Okay.
just popped the link in chat.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, it's still there. All right, there you go. Yep, that be it. Yeah. So let's see. So I've got the basic script pulled up right here. If you're up for letting me share my screen there, Mr. Host.
Yeah, go right ahead. You should be able to.
All right, let's see. It says host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, look at that. Okay, try again.
There we go. Okay. All right, so here, can y'all see all this? Or can y'all see it just fine anyway? Here, let me zoom in a little bit. It's as far as I can go.
Yeah, that's better.
All right. So this is just the raw extended basic version. The basic version. So of course it's fast to start everything. All these lovely Go subs down here. But the fun part was getting this all figured out, situated. The menu title. Of course, this is not in the 4K type-in version, or else that'd be a pain because of all these chained characters. Of course, it turns the fast mode to do everything. Then it turns the fast mode to do the print, which is why it video feed went out there for a little bit. And let's see if I can pull up my machine code version. There we go. I had to add a wait time because it was going way too fast from basic to machine code. Like
It's hard to believe.
I could just tap the cycle up the tile, and it would jump like 3. So like, nope, let's figure that out. And since fast mode is not on the encoder compile list, I had to remove the fast and slow on it. But for the most part, it was a direct translation of it in terms of getting things going. That was probably the biggest thing I had to figure out. Yeah, just a bunch of if then go tos.
So I have a question. Is mcoder a program from back in the day, or
Yes.
is it? It is. Okay.
Yeah, I tried mcoder too, but I couldn't get that one to function. They said it was much better, but I couldn't either find a good copy or the documentation was just non-existent for it for my purposes. But yeah, it has gone through just fine. And then that was what you saw. Actually, that's the wrong program. But yeah. many days at work during off hours, I put this together, even though I wasn't supposed to. Yes, air quotes, air quotes. Yeah, I'm good. Looks like we still got a few more minutes left.
And how long did it take you to write this program? About?
From having not much experience with the ZX Basic, from writing, programming, and debugging and making the features to where it actually works just fine, probably 40 hours, 40, 50 hours from just using the manual and doing just how can I do this? That works out. I've done some things with it, but nothing to this extent. So from an intermediate programmer, that's, you can go from basic and nothing to a fully functional program that's actually has some fun little uses for learning and getting the community back going on with it.
And you didn't have to use the original keyboard to do the programming.
No, I used it for, I think I ported it over and had to do the M code compiling on it, but that was about it.
No, I presume, I mean, I haven't actually used the emulators for the ZX81. So if you print from there, does it make a TIFF file or PNG or something like that? What happens from that end?
Well, like it on the 81 emulator, hang on, let me bring it up if I can find it. If I can pull it up. There's a little side window for it that has like the printout, and it just prints it there, and you can export it as a bitmap or a JPEG. That's the wrong one. Sinclair 81, that one. Yeah, there's this little print window right here. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yep.
Yeah, this little print window. Let's see. Where's my exported one? That should be it. There we go. Yeah, I forgot to disable the ZXBand command. But yeah, it'll show out here, and you can just save image as bitmap right here. Yeah. Yep, and that's how I made these like snippings for everything. Yeah,
that's really cool.
All the fun you can have for a old 1981 computer.
And they laughed at us when we sat down at our Timex Sinclairs.
They can do all kinds of things if you can get them to function on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are all ready to go for lunch here, so I got to hop off here.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Jacob.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I guess let me know if anybody needs some more copies. I've got, I think, 20 extra blank cassettes to make some more copies. There should be 4 or 5 left over right now on the store.
When I post this video to YouTube, I'm going to put a link to your shop. Just a fair warning.
Well,
whopping one order.
that's fine. I've got some repaired TI calculators on there too, so they're welcome to those as well.
Let me just refer one thing. I don't know if you guys use it or not. There's a ZX81 group from the UK in Facebook. Is run by a friend of mine, Will Woodvine, and they are very interested, very dynamic. So if you want to advertise in the sense, just refer this was done, or I can do it for you. I'm pretty sure there will be others in this side of the pond with interest on it. It's very interesting.
I actually wrote a really cool book.
It's called ZX81 something, the group. I can share the link in the meantime.
And Will actually just posted an update to the 81 emulator this morning, like about a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's up to 1.25. So if that's your bag. So Joao, take it away.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
Okay, bye-bye, Jake. So first, thank you for doing this at this time in a way that allows us also to join you guys. So I'm from Portugal. I'm 43 years old. I grew up with the ZX Spectrum, the British one. I think I had two from what I remember when I was a child with the 48K of memory. Then I moved to DOS machines with the MS-DOS 330 or 320, I think, then Windows and all of that. So I studied computer science, mostly because of the ZX Spectrum. So I started programming in BASIC, then GW Basic in Quick Basic and things like that. And I did my career and I started working as a developer. And then I moved to management and marketing and sales and things like that. So I can't do any more things like what Jacob is doing. Although I think the closest thing is when I try to program some JavaScript nowadays, and that's about it. But one thing I love is entrepreneurship. And one thing I believe is very, very important is to, well, I felt the need to say thank you for guys, for people that gave us the home computer. So if I'm a computer science guy, it's because I had this experience. In my case, because of the Sinclair machines and then the Timex machines, of course. And so I wanted to find a way to say thank you. And so 10 years ago, more or less, I started collecting these kind of machines. Now, back in the days, I had and I still have an uncle, which is a radio, I don't know if you say radio, an amateur radio. So a CB, so he used to do all those kind of things. And these kind of guys, as I'm sure you guys know, are the ones that were pretty much involved in electronics and things like that. And so he lives in the south of the country where there was a huge dynamic around the spectrum back in the days. And the fact is I had access to a lot of things that were kind of uncommon over here. So things like the floppy disk system from Timex, I had it from the FTD 3000, I had it since I was a kid. The printer, the Timex, I hope I'm not mistaken, TC 2080, which is a Seikosha 1000 printer, rebranded, I had it. So I had a lot of things, some light pans, homemade, so a lot of crazy things that I had. And I kept some of them or most of them in the attic, of course. I was lucky enough that my cousins never had any interest on any of those. So everything my uncle had, he would give me. So fast forwarding, 10 years ago, I decided to start collecting because I was 30 or 30 something years old, no kids, lots of time, some money, of course. So I started collecting thinking, okay, I'm going to collect these 5 or 6 computers to try to preserve them and basically honor this history, preserve this history even more because we had Timex Portugal. And that's something that everyone knows about, but no one remembers anymore. And I can just tell you one thing, which is last year, the #1 and #2 of Timex Portugal died, and there was not a single news about that. We're talking about the guys that put the computers in our home. I'm referring, I don't know if the names tell you anything or not. They would work very closely to Timex USA also. I'm talking about Antonio Gomes, which was the general manager, managing director of the factory over here. And I'm talking about Álvaro Oliveira, who used was pretty much involved in the team of Lou Gailey, Vitor Schiff. I'm sure you guys know those names, and that's something I also want to learn from you about what you have found in the meantime about all of this. So, so I start collecting, thinking it's 5 or 6 computers. Then you start getting them all. Then you start getting all the board revisions. I started mostly focus on the Sinclair machines, a lot of eBay, of course. Then after the computers, you start going to the calculators. Then you start going to everything. Well, bottom line, things got out of control, of course. And what puzzled me was after I had the computers, after I learned what happened in Spain, for example, because the toast rack was developed in Spain by Investronica. After trying to understand all those kind of things, then I dig into trying to understand who was Clive Sinclair. What else did he do? And the funny thing is that there's 80 or 90% of things that everyone knows or can easily find out. And then there are things that you not keep discovering every day, but you get the idea. There's a lot of things that are not so common. The guy did cordless phones through a company called Shea Communications. The guy did solid state memories through an investment in a company called Anamartic. The guy did satellite dishes for satellite signal for TV with a company called Cambridge something, not the ones we know. So I try to investigate all of that together with the audio, the calculators that we all know about. And so fast forwarding back in 2018 or something, I was thinking, what should I do? Because the fact is, I built a new house. I had a room just for the computers. Whenever someone came to my new house, I would give him a kind of a guided tour, and everyone was very happy about what they were seeing. And I kept thinking, this deserves more. This should be somewhere else. Look, guys, I'm not claiming I'm the biggest collector or anything like that. I don't even think that is relevant. But the fact is, I had a purpose, which was to honor this story. Now, that's when I started thinking, okay, I need space. I need to handle this more professionally. So I start pitching the idea to the city hall and the region where I'm based about doing a museum. And obviously, no one was sure if there was interest on this, okay? I suspected there was, because I know the simple fact that we are here today tells us that. But people around us, they think, oh no, that's for people that want to live back in the 80s or something like that, which is not the case. So I decided together with the City Hall to do a temporary exhibition to experiment how things would go out. And we did it in a local museum. And the fact is that in the first day, I put in this city, which is called Cantanhede, in the center of the country, I put more than 200 people to celebrate the anniversary of the Spectrum, 37 or 38 years after the computer was launched. And after that, we opened the exhibition. We had the speakers talking about the beginning of computing in Portugal and things like that. And then what happened was that we started having visitors coming from everywhere, from Brazil, from Spain, from the UK, from France, from Poland, from Turkey. Obviously, you need to understand one thing. Cantanhede is not a big city and it's not a tourist city, okay? So it's not like doing it in Lisbon, which is the capital of Portugal, or doing it in a big city like the ones you guys have in US. But the fact is, people would travel, they would come on vacations to Portugal and they would go to Cantanhede to visit the museum. So it got a lot of hype, a lot of visibility. A few months later, and I solved my problem, which was lack of space. I was getting, I didn't have any more space. Well, there are a couple of interesting things here, which is, this was not something that I thought as, okay, guys, let's in 10 years, I want to have a museum or something like that. That was not the case. But over the years, there were things that happened that basically were guiding me to this objective. I'll give you an example. I remember seeing in a kind of eBay, Portuguese eBay that we have, I remember seeing the advertisement for an hotel selling all the TV, all the CRTs, old CRTs that they had. And so I contact them and I bought something like 25 CRTs, all the same brand, all in good conditions. And I asked my father to go and get them in 2 travels or something. And I stored them in the attic. And then 1 year or 2 years later, I was doing the exhibition, and then I had all the TV sets, very nice, that you can see when you look at the museum and all of that. Just before we pass the video, if you have it there, David, or I can try to share it. There's just one thing that it's important, which is the next stage, which is the museum itself. So in the end of 2019, we were finalizing the temporary exhibition, and I needed to find a solution because I couldn't bring the computers back home, and I didn't want to do it. And I had a lot of people suggesting to bring it to other parts in the country. And so when I approached the City Hall again, they had already planned that they wanted to create a dedicated space for this. And that's when I realized that there is not a museum dedicated to the spectrum anywhere in the world. Now, obviously, there are many other museums and much more complete or wider scope, with a wider scope than ours. But the fact is, you look at your first computer a little bit like you look at your, well, if in Europe, I would say your football team. There it's football, it's baseball, it's basket, whatever. But the fact is, you look at it in a very special way. So it's a niche museum, but one that is basically capitalizing this relationship that people have with their first computer. So we are the only, for now, the only computer dedicated to the creations of Sir Clive Sinclair, to the creations of Timex. Now, I didn't speak much about Timex, but that was intention until now. But before that, David, do you have the video there? Do you want to share? Do you want me to try to do it? Just do 1 minute video, for example. You're muted.
I am, yes. I gotta remember to turn on
this way.
audio.
You give me time to drink some water.
Yes.
Guys, I talk a lot, so please interrupt
Cheers.
me, make questions, whatever you guys want to know, please. Yeah, that one.
Drinking water before bed burns £46 in 2 weeks.
So the speed was not the best, but I think we got the idea, and you guys can explore it afterwards, because one thing we also launched very recently was a virtual museum that you can explore on yourself. So you can go there. So from what we saw there, and then just to finalize this kind of explanation or introduction or whatever, from what we saw in the video, so we cover everything that Clive Sinclair did. We cover clones of the spectrum around the world. So you saw things there. There was one saying made in Portugal, which is the back of a Cerveni, which is the Argentinian computers, which were made by Timex in Portugal. you saw, I don't know, I think you recognize, and it was one of your interviews or colleagues recently, you saw the sketches of the TS 2068 from Gary Grimes. I contacted him before, and so he allowed us to have it there. He was the one asking me if I knew David already when you guys had your session. And so then we also have alternatives to the spectrum. So we want to remain a museum focused on the spectrum, or else we're nothing compared to many home computer museums or technology museums. So that's very clear to me. We need to be a niche museum, but we obviously try to have alternatives there. So you guys spoke today about the Mattel Aquarius. That one we don't have, but we have, there's a Macintosh there because it's one of those first 3 models signed by Steve Jobs and the team. We have, it's a PCW there. We have the Dragon, which is a UK computer that also runs Microsoft Basic, if I'm not mistaken. We have the Oric, and I have something to tell you guys about the Oric today. Don't let me forget. There's something about Oric and Timex which I found yesterday, which is a major discovery. I'll tell you about it. Then we have MSX, we have Commodores there. So we don't have, look, this is not a fan thing where you go and it's not a shrine to Sir Clive Sinclair or anyone. This is just a way to remember the beginning of computing in our homes. Other things we have there. So Paulo is Brazilian. We have all the micro digital line of computers there, from the 82C to the 95. We have the Prologica CPC. I got CPC, no, Prologica something. I don't know, CP200.
CP200.
Yeah,
CP200.
yes, precisely. I got a Ringo, which is another ZX81 clone. I don't have it yet. It's in São Paulo. I'm waiting.
It's very rare.
Yeah, I know. I know. And there is 1 or 2 others that I don't have. I'm also waiting for some other machines coming from Argentina. The ones from Timex I had already, but now I'm talking about the ones that were locally made. We have some strange Spectrum clones, not clones, but I don't know if you guys know this, but the distributor from Sinclair in Egypt would make a change in the computer. They would basically put a small switch and an EPROM, where basically you could switch between English or an Arab ROM of the Spectrum. So I have a +2 and Spectrum Plus with that work in Arab also. It's very, very nice. It was something done back in the days by the distributor and some other strange things that you can find there. Now, Timex, which is, I think, what brings us all here and what we all like. The fact is, Timex is very special for any Portuguese guy. Most people here will say, oh, I had a Spectrum, and they can be referring to the Timex 2048, the TC 2048 that we had here. The fact is, over the years, many people tried to approach the former executives and try to get feedback and information. And the fact is that no one wanted to talk much. Look, it's normal. It needs to happen after some years and all of that. Well, the fact is, and to be very, very honest, I didn't anticipate this. When you are a collector and you try to talk to the executives of the in this case Timex Portugal or anything like that, they don't give you the same attention as when you appear as the curator of a museum. And that changed everything. So I was lucky enough to start knowing 1 or 2 guys, and I had to try so many times to reach some of them. There was one that had some familiar links, and so I had to, finally I was able to get him. Then he presented me to a lot of people. At the same time, he gave me a lot of stuff. I'll tell you about kind of strange things that we got. I don't think the objects are the most important, even though we have some very strange things. I think the story, what they can tell us is much more important than the objects. But so I was lucky enough to find one of them. Then I approached another one, which was the one that died already, Álvaro Oliveira. I'm not sure. I know that guys in Timex USA talk a lot about a certain guy called Al. It's not clear to me who that Al that is referred in a lot of communications is. I'm not sure if it is this guy or not. This guy that I'm talking about, he would work as a kind of an advisor also to the board, to the Timex USA board. So there's a lot of connections here that we can explore, and more than what I can say, because of one thing that I will tell you now, I can show, not today, but I can show a lot of things because we had access to a lot of documentation. So the fact is, eventually, one by one.
Can I ask you about that documentation quick? Is this documentation that was like company private stuff, or is this stuff that's just,
No,
oh,
company. I'll explain that also. So bottom line, eventually I met that professor. The guy had a career done in UK in opticals. He had a PhD in optical systems and things like that. And then he basically, when Timex Portugal decided to convert the unit to the computing, to the electronics, he was the one that was hired to go to Scotland to try to understand how things were in Timex Dundee and basically start creating it here also. Yeah, that's so he was the main one involved in that. Now, and one thing I imagine it's clear for everyone, one difference from what happened in Timex Dundee to Timex Portugal is that in Timex Portugal they created an engineering team, an R&D center. So in the beginning, the first models like the TS1000, the TS1500, I think they were being designed in the Silicon Valley, if I'm not mistaken, some Timex unit in US there, and then assembled, some of them assembled here. The 1500, no doubt about it. The 1000, I think you can find some assembled in Portugal, some assembled in other places. That's at least from what the ones I have and what I've seen. So, so then I start meeting a few of these guys, former executives from Timex in Portugal. Then one of these guys tells me, you need to meet my former secretary. And this lady, guys, she opened me all the doors. She convinced me that Timex was, obviously the computers were very important in the 80s in Portugal. I'm talking Timex Portugal, but then she opened my, let's say, my eyes to many other things that were already happening, like IBM projects. So they were doing projects to IBM, Minolta, I imagine you know the name of the company, Control Data. Then in the end of the 80s, Ugin Sweden, which was a POS, a Swedish POS manufacturer, which gave a huge project to Portugal also. Because basically the guys start using the gate arrays, the SCLD technology. They start using it in the computers and in many other things afterwards. Then other things regarding what Adam asked about the documentation. So one day I got a phone call from a friend. The guy repairs Spectrum computers, and he told me, look, there's something strange coming up. There's this guy calling me. He bought many computers and he wants to repair them, and he bought them in an auction from a company that went bankrupt. And he showed me some pictures, and there was one of those Crystal TS2068. You know, the ones that are transparent, okay? And we know, and that was explained to me from by the guys at Timex Portugal, they would use those cases to validate if the injection was properly done from the plastic mold. So so I looked at the computer and I said, this was, I don't know, imagine September last year, something like that. In August, that guy that I mentioned, Álvaro Oliveira, had died. So I thought this must be connected. And the fact it was. So his company went bankrupt and someone sold some material. Now, there was this guy in Portugal that bought it. The guy was an artist, basically. And he bought it and he wanted to make money out of it. So my friend was very friend in the sense that he basically told me, whatever you want, let's make a bid. Try to convince the guy to sell this to us and you keep whatever you want. And so everything that was awkward, I tried to get for the museum. We did. So we got some FDDs saying engineering samples, and some other things saying engineering samples. I got what was it? Oh, I got a very strange thing, which I haven't tried yet, which was a TC Timex computer 2068 converted to, changed to NTSC. Now, remember one thing, these guys would come from Portugal to meetings in Waterbury very frequently to discuss things, because even when Timex in US decided to get out of the computer business, the fact is that the unit in Portugal was still reporting to US. So there was a lot of decisions being made. I have a lot of documents showing the guys from US involved in the decisions many years after after 84, when they got out of the computer business directly in US. So bottom line, we got those computers. I've contacted the guy and asking if there was any paperwork, and he told me that it went to the bin or something like that. So obviously I was upset with that. Now, what I was not expecting is that I would, through the family of one of these guys, I would have access to something that I never thought could exist, which is the biggest amount of paperwork that someone, I can't describe you. It's like someone kept all the papers that he touched for many years. We're talking about personal notes from all the travels to US with dates and everything. We're talking about, I don't know, pharmacy stuff, pharmacy prescriptions. We're talking about communication from the banks. So I'm talking about private stuff that doesn't make it, we don't care about that, and we respect obviously that. So, but then we're talking about one very good thing, which is there were no emails. There was this thing called the telex. So we got all the telex that were going. For example, I have telex from at least 2 or 3 changes in the computer team. So the guys from US saying, okay, now Mr. whatever, I don't remember the name, is going to report to me. And most of them are from Lou Gailey. I want to ask you guys, is he still alive? Anyone knows about him?
Yeah, I believe Lou is still alive.
It would be amazing to show him, to have some, I haven't tried. I know that Vitor Schiff, which was another very important person to try to get contact with. The last thing I heard, he moved to Philippines or something, and the email doesn't work. So I don't have contact with anyone. The only contacts I have right now are with the current, the CEO and some other guys at Timex USA, but those don't have any connection with the computers, of course. They were not there. So bottom line, I have a lot of interest in having you guys helping to get in touch with some of these guys. But so we have a lot of paperwork. I'll give you just one example. We know, I knew from an interview that there was something going on between Timex Portugal and Investronica in Spain, the Spanish distributor. Something about they've been trying to do something on their own without Sinclair. I heard this in an interview. I have a paper from a lawyer from Timex saying how that should be pitched to try to avoid problems with Amstrad. So something was really happening. Now, obviously I need to be careful. I want to disclose whatever I can, but I need to be careful because we need to look at this. And just to give you an idea, supposedly I'm still more or less at half of what exists of paperwork. It covers also the end of Timex Portugal with the Ugin Sueda project, which obviously it's not related to the computers itself. But so we're more or less at 50%, and I can tell you that we have already 2,000 PDF files scanned. Magazines, books, letters, internal reports, and those are the best ones because they give us numbers, production figures, things like that. There are some crazy things about, I don't know if you guys in US paid attention to this, but in Europe, we found a few PCBs of the TS1000 and the ZX81 saying made in Spain, just a PCB. I was able to find where they were developed. So basically, at one moment in time, they use some PCB manufacturers in Spain. It's just a tiny detail. It's nothing special. But when you are trying to understand what happened, this is information. And so, and just to stop for a while also, when I had a call with Stuart, which is something, I'm really very busy with a lot of things happening. But for example, Stuart has one thing which I'm missing in the museum and I need to get, which is that TC 1510 that you have, the 1510, I think, the briefcase.
Yeah, the molded case for the
yes,
1000.
yeah, that one. I have another one which I thought it was the right one, but it's not. So that one I really need to get from you. Yeah. So, but it's really just lack of time because there's so many things happening. And when you're talking about the museum, you need to focus not only in being here today, in at the same time being editing some videos to launch, doing marketing for the museum, talking with guys like Stuart, like the guy from the Ana Martic, which is another one I'm still waiting to follow up with. So there's a lot of things happening. So I think this gives you.
Can I ask a quick question about? Yeah. So from what I understand, like I'm guessing this is still a side gig, right? You're not 100% focused on.
Yeah. I'm the CEO of an artificial intelligence company working in ophthalmology.
So about how many hours are you able to dedicate to the museum? A week or a month or whatever?
This is being recorded. I cannot answer that.
Oh, okay.
No, just jokes aside. Look, I've always worked a lot, so I have a huge capacity to work, and I'm very stubborn or resilient, like people like to say today in these days. But this consumes me. It's another job. It's another day job, and it's been like this for many years already. And obviously, I'm trying to, for example, this month we have our first full-time, let's say, worker or intern starting. When I said we did 2,000 PDFs, I was not the one doing them. I have someone working in my house doing it because with all the COVID and all of that, we had to find a way to do it. I have 3 different scanners around me that they use for that. But the fact is, I had to start basically creating the conditions for this to go. So this is an amateur or an hobby project, but at the same time, from an entrepreneurship point of view, is the biggest project I ever got involved and one that keeps growing and that I don't control. So I want to see how far can it go. So it's a side project, but it's a very important one. I try to use volunteers as much as possible. For example, I have a friend of mine that works in the same company as same group that I'm working for. The guy is doing the reverse engineering of the SCLD from the Timex computer because it was used in the TC 2068 and TC 2048. It was used in the Timex Terminal 3000. I assume you are familiar with the Timex Terminal or not? It's a CPM, it's that keyboard that allows you to run CPM when connected to the FTD and the monitor. And that's something that is very, very uncommon, even here, because they made very few. So guys, throw any questions you have. I tried to give you an overview. I'm not here to sell the museum, the concept of the museum, or I hope you guys all come to Portugal one day and that we can meet, but it's not an art sale. I'm just here to meet new people and share this.
We'll all come at once.
I have a couple of things. I was curious. It came up in our last Zoom, actually, of this group. No one here had any kind of inkling, I think, of how many 1500s were made. Has that data, do you have any idea how many TS 1500s were made? We don't know if it's 1,000, 10,000, 40,000.
Yeah. What I can tell you, I'm always very open, okay? So I'm not hiding information or anything like that. I don't remember anything now. So reports that the guys from Portugal would take for the meetings in US, telling what was happening in the unit in Portugal. In some of those reports, for the first time in my life, I saw some production figures that includes many of the models. I'm not sure, but I would imagine that the TS 1500 is there. I'm pretty sure it is, but it is a snapshot of information. So it's a snapshot on a certain date. So I will be able to share that, whatever I have in the future, Stuart. I don't know it right now. There is one thing I knew and that I found a lot of paperwork, which is about I think Timex referred to it as the cost reduction project for the TS 1500, which is the second board version that was made in Portugal, using for the first time the gate array instead of the Ferranti ULA. So there were two versions of the TS 1500. That's clear for everyone, right? One with a smaller board.
I didn't know.
Well, you have way more information than we do.
Yeah, it was. And the second, I have the diagrams, the schematics, and I have them because I bought them also over the years. And there were two versions. The second one, so the first one was designed in US. I can see in the interviews I did, because some of the guys in Portugal went to, it was somewhere in Silicon Valley. So there was I remember there was something from Timex there, and it was in that part of the United States. And so they designed it there and assembled it in Portugal. But then they did a cost reduction version where they redesigned the board, smaller board, using for the first time an SCLD. Now, the SCLD, it's very important to us in Portugal because it's one of the first attempts to use what's the name? The surface mount. Yes, precisely. So Timex had one of the first machines, one of the first 5 machines in the world or something to do soldering of surface mount. That is written in some interview that I saw already. And so, and the other very nice thing is this. One of these guys I interviewed, honestly, he didn't care much about what happened in Timex anymore, but he cared about one thing, which was the concept of a living lab. And what he meant by living lab, and he was involved in the European network of living labs, what he meant was this. Timex was so big in terms of the demand that there was for the computers back then, that they were able to give work to a lot of companies in Portugal around them. And many of those companies could invest in new production methods. For example, things like that are very common nowadays, the bubble wrap that everyone uses nowadays, Timex started using it back in the days. Or the technologies that they had to come up with to go through the FCC approval in US because of the radiation. The painting, the silver painting they did, they experimented a lot of things. I have one or two things with the reference of the paint within from when they were experimenting. That came from the tool room from Timex Portugal. So and so this concept of the living lab, the fact is one very important research center in Portugal started precisely 40 years ago. And one of their main collaboration was with Timex. And they were developing what they called back then the gate arrays, which was the SCLD used in many of these machines. Not all of them. The TS 2068 uses an SCLD developed in US. VLSI, I think it's the brand. I'm not sure, but I think it is.
It was NCR, but they did look at VLSI briefly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, Joao, do you have any of these? I don't know if
that's one of the SCLDs. I can't see very well.
Yeah, it is. It's this is a prototype. I have a pile of them. So here's a sort of a later. This is an all black model, right? Let me just.
I don't know if I can put you. I don't know if I can increase just your window. No, probably not.
So here's one that's more of a prototype.
David, if you back that up and put it closer to your face, it'll probably focus a little better. Like,
yeah,
if you go like that, try that.
Well, so do you have any of those?
Let me just tell you one thing. I have things that I don't know what they are, and that's my problem now. So perhaps your photos can help me also, because so this guy where I had access to the paperwork. Well, I didn't tell you the other thing. I also had access to a lot of hardware. Things like, for example, so Timex Portugal was not involved in the QL, but the guy was sending, so I have something like 6 QLs, one of them with a paper note saying this one is to be shipped to Japan. Don't ask me to whom, well, probably there was a guy in Japan that they were working a lot. We have some paperwork about that. But so bottom line, he was pretty much involved. Let me just add another thing, which is, I don't know if you guys know, the chief architect of the QL is a guy called David Carolyn. David Carolyn lived in Portugal for a while because his father was an ambassador or something. He speaks Portuguese. Now, that guy worked a lot with Timex Portugal because he was involved in this amazing project, this amazing thing called the TENET. TENET, in Portuguese, we say TENET, Timex Educational Network, which is one of the 2 prototypes that Timex Portugal was doing and that they never launched. I can go back to that afterwards. But so there was collaboration from guys, even in this case, a guy that came from Sinclair. I don't know if on a personal level, probably, but he was working with Timex Portugal. Now, regarding what we have or don't have, I just referred this because of the QL. So the guy that gave, the family of the guy that from where we had access to the paperwork also gave us a lot of hardware. Many, many things saying engineering samples with a sticker just saying engineering sample. Now, people sometimes, look, this is strange. I know that some people are after an FDD system or something like that. Sometimes it happens to me that I open a case and I say, what do I have here? Oh, another FDD system. But I can't sell these kind of things. It came from guys from Timex. So this has to be preserved, obviously. If I need to sell something, I will sell the ones I bought elsewhere, not the ones that came from Timex, of course. So bottom line, a lot of things came. Among them, things as simple as 7 or 8 tapes from dictaphones that he was using back in the day. So now I can hear the voice of the guy. And then now I realize, I don't know if you guys know, there was micro tapes and mini tapes. These nice things that people did in the 80s. So now I'm waiting for another recorder of those to try to digitalize all this information. Now,
I'd like to say something about that. Like in my work with the Ballet Astrocade, a different system, they would often take like person who was programming a tape that they would send out, they would sometimes put notes that they'd say, like, let's say they wrote a program called the program A, this is version 6 of it. Sometimes they'd note to themselves, hey, this is the second program or whatever. And then, so I get to hear their voice, and it's like something that comes from the past 40 years ago. And it's kind of like amazing to me, especially if like sometimes they'll give a backstory or something about their game, and they'll read like a little story, like what the game's about. And so you get to hear what that programmer sounded like, you know?
Yeah, and in my case, it's even more strange because I met the guy just once. I had a conversation with him, and then the guy died. And now I'm hearing his voice, and I didn't know what to expect in the tapes. And the funny thing is, the tapes are from the period in Timex Portugal. Why? And then because I work, I have access to his former secretary. I've asked why, and she told me, look, the guy would come to the plant, to the unit at night. So eventually I had to stay there to work with him, and I couldn't work during the day and during the night and be there all the time. So eventually the management tried to convince him to use the dictaphone for him to leave the message of whatever needed to be typed, because remember, no computers back in the day. So you had to type, telex, all those kind of things. So that's why there are some tapes, and I'm waiting to see them. But so to go to what David was saying, and sorry for all this travel around the matter. Among those things, I have some boards with some of those gate arrays without any identification. I have 1 or 2 that you can see the underside of beneath it, and you have the gold connections. But to be very honest, I don't know what they are. And I don't know if I'm going to find out unless my colleague can connect them somehow, or we can compare with yours. So it's not like the guy told me what he was giving. No, it's his family and they don't know what it is.
The stuff I showed you, it came from, it was a guy here in Florida named Eric Johnson. And his uncle worked at Timex in Waterbury, and when they shut down, Eric got a lot of stuff from Waterbury from his uncle, right? I have, for instance, a drawer full of right angle 18-pin cartridge connectors. I have no idea what I'm going to do with a drawer full of cartridge connectors, but I have them. But what I have is a drawer full of 1500, TS 1500 SCLD prototypes. And they all say, they all say TS 1500 PT, which stands for Portugal, right? Yep. And there's a clear progression of dates because they're all date stamped and part numbers, and it seems to me like that's a good thing that belongs more with you than with me. So that's why I was asking, we'll figure out how to get it to you.
Yeah, we'll find a way. We'll find a way. There are so many things that happened, and even to connect the dots with what you were saying. For example, there's this guy in Portugal that he signs with the name Johnny Red. His name is the translation of that in Portuguese. I invited him to be here today, but he is not. And so João, like myself, he did this very old website, but which is very accurate in terms of contents, called Timex Computer World. And recently, and I presented this in one of our last YouTube videos, and please accept my apologies. We speak them in Portuguese because we started as a Portuguese project. So even though to me speak English or Portuguese is not the same, but it's easy. And if I was doing this alone, I would be doing it in English, of course. But because we are in Portugal, because we have the collaboration of the City Hall and all of that, I'm doing it in Portuguese. But what we've been trying to do is to start subtitling at least the best videos. And that one should be subtitled. Now, over the years, this guy, which is not a collector, he doesn't even like to be considered a collector, he was preserving the story of Timex from Portugal. So he had a lot of friends in Poland, he had a lot of friends in US. He started getting all those fanzines from US. People would send him, I have pins from the Midwest Festival or something. I don't know, the convention you guys do. So I had a lot of things coming from the US, and this last November or something, the guy basically decided to give away everything, basically, almost everything to us. I was very honored. The guy tried for many years to talk with Timex Portugal and he couldn't. So it's even something that he really wanted to do. So I bought 3 copies of your book, David, and I gave one to him. I wanted to give it to him because I think he deserved to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't read mine, to be very honest. I have it, but I haven't read it. I just skim read it. And so he gave us a lot of things, and he gave us one thing which it's symbolic, but I think it's very important. He gave us the website. So we are now doing a revamp of the website and trying to put also some other information that we don't have. So that is not there. For example, I spoke about the 10net. I would like to address that. But at the same time, I would like to push a little bit on Stuart, just teasing. But so just to say to Stuart, for example, we have in that website, they refer some things like the Silver Avenger, which was the name of what the FTD system. I think the
that's what the Americans decided to call the Portuguese 2068.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the FOPI system, but it was the Americans or Zebra.
It was I think it was the folks who did the magazines, the fanzines.
Okay. Yeah. And so there are things for sure that we don't know and we could head there, but there are a couple of interesting things that then let me just share with you. So very uncommon things we have in the museum. There were 2 myths in Portugal about what Timex was doing when they shut down. 2 systems, one called 10net, the other one the TC 3256, so a 256 computer, a K computer. Now, the first one, the Timex Educational Network. We didn't know much about it. I'm surprised now because I have a pile of information about the Tenet. I heard in an interview, it was a project done to the Chinese railway with an attempt to sell a system to them, which then someone else in the team told me, no, it was for India. And I was able to confirm that it was for India. Now, I do have communications from Timex Portugal with China, with India, with all of this, normally through business developers that were involved there. And there was this guy living in UK, which was fundamental also for another thing, which was the business of exporting the computers to Poland, which I think it was one of the major breakthroughs of what Timex was able to do, because we can't forget that, at least for us Europeans, that now we have this common market. Well, it's normal for you guys. For us, it was not until '86. And so exporting computers to Poland, you need to get authorization permits and things like that. And so what Timex was able to do, Timex Portugal, was to basically go through all the steps until they got a stamp saying we can export this huge amount of computers. At least the plan was that one. And so I was referring to this because I was surprised, because there's a lot of things about the exportation of computers to Poland, but also a lot of things about the Tenet, which shows that the Tenet was a thing that they worked a lot. Now, what was the concept of the Tenet? 25 computers connected in a network, where the teacher would have the master computer and would run a program and would at the same time load in every computer. Now,
what's the time period for this then?
I would say 86, 87. I'm not sure, but 86, 88, it's between those times, 87 probably. Now, I interviewed the guy that coded this. And he described this, and it was amazing to hear him. It's the same guy that coded the Time Word cartridge, the Portuguese cartridge for the TC 2068, which is basically a copy of WordStar, I think. He basically told me, I was given a couple of weeks to convert this, and I had to copy it. And he even told me one thing which is true. If you look at the headers of the code in hexadecimal, or if you open it, his name is written there, and it's true. It's there. We confirmed. He told me, man, I could have problems because I decided to put my name there, and the fact in the copyright his name is there. So that guy basically was called to a meeting, and someone told him, "Are you seeing all those ladies that work in the unit back downstairs assembling the computers? If you don't do this in the next 1 or 2 months, they're going all to be sent away." And so he told me he was never so close to a burnout from that period. And he also described me something that I would pay money to see, but no one has anything like that, which was the moment, he says, the moment they tried for the first time the system with the 25 computers connected was, and all of them start beeping at the same time, was very fascinating. And so we don't have the system is not working. I have 2 prototypes of the Tenet because we had one, well, one is not mine, it's from a friend of mine that when the unit went, when they shut down in Portugal, the guy went there and he was able to get one, which is a TC 2048, where someone in the tool room, they increased the case, the cabinet of the computer. They made it higher. And basically it has 2 boards, not one, it has 2. One is the TC 2048 board, and the other one is the dedicated one from the Tenet system with the EPROMs and all of that. And it says something like slave computer number 9. So it's configured with some jumpers for that. What I was not expecting, because I never heard about this, was I visit the former facilities of Timex in Portugal last May. And so one of the guys from that period still works there in another company that occupies the same space. And so the guy gave me one thing, and he told me, what you don't know is that the Tenet, before it was a computer, there was other prototypes as an interface. And so he gave me a 10net in the form of an interface that you could plug to the computer. Now, again, all of this needs still, the EPROMs need to be read and preserved. Nothing of that was done. We didn't try them yet, of course. And we don't have the master for now. So I'm not sure if we will ever be able to reproduce such a thing. Regarding the other computer, no one knew if it existed or not. There was, like in US, there was very fancy photographs and presentations done and people saying that it's very nice and things like that. But the fact is that it seems that no one ever saw one, but it exists. Now, I don't have a fully working 3256. I do have the PCB saying 3256. When I saw it, when someone gave it to me, a lot of PCBs, and I was going through them. I remember being in my living room next door, and I was going through them, and I see the name 3256, and I start screaming, it exists. This existed. So they did something because they have the PCBs without any component. The one I have, it doesn't have any component. Then I start pushing for other parts, and the guy from the design was able to get me the keyboard, which is very similar to the Timex Terminal 3000. And the keyboard is not only a keyboard, it has some electronics in the keyboard, but we don't have the components from the main PCB. But the son of the former managing director swears that he still has it and that he used a prototype of one of those computers until the 90s, and that he still has it. He told me he was not going to give it, but he was going to allow us to study it and look at it in pretty much detail. Internally, at Timex, no one liked that computer. Yeah, basically, everyone was saying, this is this is something that is dead already when they are pushing us to do this, because we should be working for the PC environment, for the IBM PC stuff, and not keep pushing for the Spectrum platform anymore. That's what people here refer, which is it took them a lot of time to, they didn't switch to the PC, and that was a mistake. More questions?
This isn't exactly a question, but I wanted to point out that when I did go to Portugal and visit the Timex factory, it was a situation where I was kind of I was helped with that by an employee of Boeing aircraft. Basically, Boeing would sell these very expensive airplanes to Portugal, and they had a program to try to help Portugal offset the balance of payments by helping them export to the US. And but when he described Portugal, he said at the time, Portugal had the lowest wages in the European Union. I think at the time it was like 42 cents was a reasonable an hour was a reasonable hourly wage. So, I mean, I'm sure you could get any kind of historian wouldn't take a lot to work back and find out that one of the reasons they weren't made in, let's say, Scotland, for example, is that the wages in Portugal were probably half of what they were in England. And that might be something in your museum to document at the time. Why?
We're doing it, Stuart. So there, I can give you then some other information on what we did already. So because of that secretary from some of the team members at Timex Portugal, I was able to, instead of just thinking of the computer, start looking at Timex in a different way. And Timex was a very
high-tech manufacturer is what they were.
And which was completely different from the rest of the country. Now, the unit was opened in December 10th, I think, from 1970, and they started with the mechanical watches. Okay, 5 years later, we have our revolution in Portugal, and basically the unions start putting a lot of pressure. They did an hijack of the team, so there was a lot of pressure because basically it was these capitalists trying to get to explore the workers. What they were forgetting is that Timex was paying much more than any other company over here. So what people tell us nowadays is it was stupidity, because the company was not exploring people. Obviously, people assembling computers were not being paid like the engineers, but they were paying above the national wages. But yes, Portugal was getting out of a dictatorship, so there was a lot of difficulties involved. Now, so in 75, basically there is this huge problem that involves an hijack of the executives, the Scottish executives that were here managing the company, because this was founded by guys coming from Timex Dundee, with a lot of connections to this story. Because, for example, one of the guys that was managing director of Timex in Portugal was also one of the investors of the Prestwick PCB manufacturer, which is the guys that did more PCBs for the Spectrum. So this is all interconnected, as normal. And so eventually what the guys in Timex US do is completely shut down the unit. And you, in Portugal, in the end of the 70s, you have something like less than 100 people working there. Now, Antonio Gomes, which is the first Portuguese to become the managing director, was there. And then there's this, it's when Clive Sinclair approaches Fred Olsen and they start talking about this. And then the first thing is Timex Dundee starts producing or assembling these computers to Sinclair. Now, I've heard two versions of the story. I heard the version that it was Fred Olsen challenging the team in Portugal to create this unit for the computing. And I heard the version that no, the managing director in Portugal was very entrepreneur. And so he came there and he said, we're the best guys in the world, we're going to do this. And well, independently of that, they created an engineering team and they start working in this. And the fact is that they went back to something like 2,000 employees in the unit during the 80s. And it was a very successful situation. Now, because of the secretary of these guys, like I was saying in the beginning, I start looking at all the big picture since Timex opened, even more because that lady, she was the daughter of the, how do we say this? So Timex was created in a farm just in the south of Lisbon, the other side of the river. It was a farm, okay? Agriculture farm with sheep, with the cows, with those kind of things, with the apple trees, all those kind of things. Now, the guy that took care of all of this, his daughter was this lady. So she grew up. So she has a picture of the moment that the US guy and another one, I don't remember the nationality of the other guy, go there and they tell to her father, so we are this gentleman, we bought this farm and we are going to build a unit to manufacture watches in a certain part of the farm. We're talking a very big farm, so the Timex plant is just a tiny part of that. And the gentlemen, they had a Polaroid camera and they took them 2 Polaroids, which I have. So we have the moment it was announced that this unit was going to be created. And then I am in touch with the family of the first managing directors of Timex, the Scottish guys coming over here. And one of them sent us all the photos and the clipping of newspapers from back in the days that they had for the opening of the unit. So if you go to our YouTube, the first 3 videos I launched was in December 10, 2020. If you go there, and those ones are subtitled already, very small videos showing pictures. And I did it was a funny thing I tried to do, which was I did it 3 times on the day. So at 3 o'clock, which was the formal hour of the opening, I did it at, I did one in the middle of afternoon or whatever, and then one at night because they went for a dinner. And we have the menu of the dinner. We have all of that. So eventually what happened, and this is when I tell you that I was not planning any of this in the beginning, it's when you start seeing the family of these guys coming and sending you the information and wanting to help you to document this. So it's an honor but it's a huge responsibility at the same time. So yes, Stuart, we want to cover everything at least that happened in Portugal, not only the computers, only the social context, the political context, those kind of things.
So does it make you feel like a little overwhelmed at times to be working with all this stuff and trying to find people to help volunteer, and because you want to be able to share it as much as you can, and then you're like, how do I share this? What's the best way to do it? How do you deal with that?
It's a nightmare many times. It's been very hard for me to cope with everything and to try to find the balance. I'm not talking about the balance between my work and this. I'm talking about the balance between my sanity and managing all of this, okay? So my house, until 2 weeks ago, was kind of I don't know how my wife copes with it. It was kind of a factory, because I have one room where I film things. I have one room, where I do some repairs from time to time, or at least I clean the objects when I get them. And then I have someone that I had to find to come and put some stamps in the objects and do an inventory and document everything, because then I have a very good memory, but then I start mixing things up and then I forget the information. And if you forget it, it's lost. So you can't. So it's very, very hard. Right now, the only thing missing to organize in my house is the place where I'm filming, because it's filled with stuff that I have, again, to document and to launch new videos. But so it's been hard. At the end of the day, I looked at it and I said, nah, I'm going to buy 1 or 2 other scanners. I'm going to hire one guy, and I'm going to put him working in my house. It was the first person to enter my house during this COVID pandemic. And I'm going to put it working here, because he needs to be able to call me from time to time and ask me what it is, something, because I need to be present. So it's very hard. There is one good thing that I have. I'm very stubborn. I have one quality or not quality, which is this. I always do things. For example, imagine that you're an expert in marketing, Adam, and I'm waiting for your help on something. If you promise and you don't deliver, I'm going to make the decisions and make it happen. Not the best way, I don't care. It's the one I thought it was the best at that moment in time. So what I mean is, I don't stay.
And that's to keep a time frame. So do you have a long-term time frame? I mean, I don't want to divert you from what you're saying, but is that because you want to get it done when you get it done? Like, do you know what I mean?
I want to, one of the things that fascinates me most is and I think this is very typical. I really feel I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not saying this because everyone talks about entrepreneurship nowadays or anything like that. It's really because all my life, that's how I've been. I wanted to practice karate. I created a dojo. I wanted to practice table tennis. I created a dojo. Why? Because I grew up in a small village where we didn't have those things. So if you wanted, you needed to find a way. And I had some examples around me that gave me those teachings. So, and one of the best things in life, at least for me, is the adrenaline of having something done. So when you conclude something, that's fascinating to me. So it's not like I have this time frame saying I need to do this by this date or this by this date. One thing is, okay, you're doing an event to celebrate the 40 years of the Spectrum. You have a date you need to obey. If not, then the only thing I know is you need to keep pushing and more and aim for the moon shots and those kind of concepts to be able to deliver something special. For example, come on, we're an amateur museum and we have a virtual tour. I didn't pay anything for it. I'll tell you how I did it. I got a kind of a spam email saying we do this kind of things, and I was looking at it and I thought, I'm going to answer this, and I answered the guy saying something like this: look, we're not the typical customer that buys and pays for things. No, everything in the museum, or almost everything, is done by us. It's not like we got a huge pile of money and we hired someone to do the museum. No, we have 15 monitors there. Each of them has a Raspberry Pi with contents that we created. So basically, I got a friend of mine and I told him, I need a Raspberry Pi that loads some videos or goes to the internet and gets this website or whatever. And he developed it. So we did it on our own. audio guide. We did it. So on our own again. So knowing that, when I got that spam message, I answered the guy saying, we're not the typical customer, but just for me to consider how much does this cost? Because the way I look at things is like this. Either it makes some sense and I start dreaming about them, and then my mind starts putting pieces together and how to do it, or I don't believe on that and I say, okay, for example, I would love to have a robot doing the guided tours in the museum, but they cost 40,000 euros. So it's crazy. I don't have money for that. So it's not an intelligent investment. So let's forget about that. But so when the guy replied to me and he said, oh, I know about your museum, because that's one thing we have, which is there's an amazing willingness with the project, because the project is about something that tells a lot to many of us. And so there's fond memories of everyone about the Spectrum and all that. So the guy basically tells me, oh, I know about your museum. Look, in Portugal, and I can elaborate on that, but in Portugal, the museum is known everywhere. All the public TV channels came to film it when we opened. When Circle Life Sinclair died, we have TV channels coming here to interview you about that, about the importance that he had for all of this. So in Portugal, it is recognized. Elsewhere, it is not. The way I see it is like you start within the collectors and then you start expanding. And then people start to know about your work. So in Portugal, we've done it already. In the US, in UK, no. Obviously, only the collectors know about what we're doing. That's more or less it. So going back to the virtual tour, the guy replies saying he knew about this, and he basically said something like this: we do the virtual tour for free. You just have to pay the hosting, which costs something like 50 euros per year or something like that. And we even offer you the first year. And I said, so you're basically doing me a virtual tour, which is something I was considering already to buy a GoPro 360 and some other things. I bought some Oculus Quest to experiment with all of that. So I was already thinking, I need to do this somehow. I don't know how, but I'll find a way. And the guy comes and he says, we can do it for free. And we just want you to say that we're partners and all that. And I said, when do you want to start? This Thursday? Okay, let's do it. And so now we have it. And that's what's so amazing about this, which is, it's not like I planned this in the long term. No, I just take all the opportunities that come. So if tomorrow you approach me and you say, there's something I could do to help you, and it has value for the community, let's do it. Imagine David one of these days tells me, I want to launch a Portuguese version of my book, and we should do it through the museum. We're launching our first book on April this year on the celebration of the 40 years. We're going to have a book from a friend of mine. I can explain that better, but about all the Portuguese programs and games, because until he started looking at this, people thought that there was 10 Portuguese games or something like that. No, we have hundreds, not big things, small things. We didn't have a distribution channel or network. We had a lot of piracy. Everything here was piracy. So in terms of software, do you guys know a software called Omni Copy too? No, Omni Copy was one of the most famous copying programs for the Spectrum. And the name seems to be, and copyright was Omnisoft. So it seems to be something from the UK. It's Portuguese. The guy sold 3 copies, and then they start using the copier to copy the program. And he went to Argentina. It appeared in Brazil with another name, Brazil and Argentina with another name. So people change the name and start selling it everywhere. So this is how things have been going.
That's just fantastic, Joao. I don't even know where to begin. So you mentioned early on Investronica, and they, I think it was in late '83, maybe early '84, that there was an importer that was bringing in hardware that they made, disk drives and keyboards and a lot of other stuff that looked like, some of it looked like Quicksilver hardware, like the sound synthesizer and some other stuff. I don't know, what became of that, but there was a couple of full page, full color ads in, the magazines that we had. And when I first saw that, I was like, it took me a while to figure out what was going on, but you filled in a whole bunch of interesting detail about that.
Yeah, Investronica. So I think I haven't dig that much because the guys from Spain. So there's this El Mundo del Spectrum World in Spanish, which is a group of guys, very dynamic. The Spanish market for the Spectrum was probably the second biggest in terms of it's like in UK. It was crazy. They launched a lot of games, so a lot of publishers. So it was different from Portugal, much more interesting there. And so those guys, they launched a couple of books on what happened in Spain, and one of them interviewed guys from Investronica. What I can bring is now the fact that there was connection with Portugal, and that was something I never heard about before the guys in Timex told me. One thing I don't know if you guys know, and it's probably not so relevant to you, but Investronica, it's a company which is the IT department or the IT company from a supermarket. El Corte Inglés. El Corte Inglés is a very famous Spanish supermarket. They're also in Portugal now. And so what I didn't know back in a few years ago is that they are basically the IT department of El Corte Inglés. And so Investronica were the ones developing the Derby, the toast rack. I don't know why, but the fact is that they were the ones doing it. I know that they sold some Timex hardware in Spain. I never found it, but the floppy disks, I think they sold it also. So it would be interesting to see if in what you're saying, David, if the floppy disks also appear and if they are the ones from Timex, at least in brochures. And yes, there's not much more that I can say right now. What I know is that there was no Timex unit in Spain, because I was, when we saw the PCB saying Spain, we were puzzled with it, but no, that didn't exist.
So there was a guy who was associated with Timex, and I'm just going to try to find my window here. Billy Skirm, and he after Timex, he went on to work at Scion, the tape and the little handheld device people. Yeah. But in some point in the 80s, he did a presentation to one of the user groups here.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I remember seeing a presentation that brings a lot of information.
Yeah.
It's someone from Scion, yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he says right now, but I remember reading.
Well, so he was talking about, this sort of next model that was going to come after the 2068 that would have a megabyte of RAM and virtual memory and 256 colors and would sell for $199. I don't know about that. but it sounds like, that's the same. Probably he was talking about the 3256.
Yes, but it was 256K of memory.
Yeah.
But probably it was. But look, that one, they didn't do anything. It was just something that in the end, someone said, okay, let's do it. But they didn't launch it. There was one or two wireframing prototypes. I still need to see the other one, but it's not like they had a newspaper article about it that showed it, but it was just mock-ups and things like that. Unlike the 10net that I mentioned to you, that one was much more advanced than what we knew.
Yeah, that's nifty. That's very nifty. I'm gonna Gary. His last name is escaping me now.
Gary Grimes? No.
Yes, Grimes. Yeah. He talked about with us about his 1 year at Timex,
1
right?
year work. Yeah.
And that's how he got there. And one of his connections was this guy named John Houlihan who hired him. And in doing some digging, I found on an auto website, because John worked at GM and designed cars and stuff. But on an auto website, I found this blog post about him, and like Gary, he had saved all these drawings that he'd done over the years, right? And one of these drawings that he did was for a watch that would have connected to the 2000, right? But the interesting thing about it was the date on the drawing was late December, like, December 20th or something, right? And then they hired Gary, and he started at the very beginning of January. And, by the end of January, they settled on a design that he had done, and they made a mock-up. And so so Gary has a photo of this mock-up, but it's a real nice high resolution photo. If he hasn't sent it to you, ask him for it.
Okay, I will.
Or I'll send it to you.
Okay, okay.
But what's amazing about it is that you can zoom in and you can see the lines are drawn by hand.
Okay.
Right? And it says, Timex Sinclair 2048, and the mock-up is not exactly the same as the production version, but it was what was shown in the magazines. And when I saw those things in the magazines at the time, I just assumed, oh, this is the real deal. I was like 14 at the time, so it didn't occur to me that it was not.
Yeah.
But this was he showed us his book, and we caught that picture that it was it was not a 2068, but it was a 2048, and so it made us wonder, did that thing ever get done? But this you have to see the drawing. I will send it to you a little bit later today.
Okay.
So cool to zoom in and see, where somebody's hand has squiggled a little bit where there should be a straight line.
Yeah, it's amazing
fascinating
to look back at these things. There was something that I saw and that puzzled me from one thing I think it's a picture you have in the group or in this event or something. So before I start talking also to you, David, I read somewhere about this theory that the TS 2068 was supposed to be called 2048. And that, let me just go to the end, because I know some things, there may be already other information that challenges this, but okay, so I read somewhere about this. And then there is this theory that there was this meeting with, I don't know if it was Fred Olson or someone like him, but someone high in the hierarchy, and they presented the computer, but there was a mistake. What was it? There was a mistake in the number, and instead they read 2068, and they thought it was nicer, and so they use it. Now, I do have a press release showing the computer, the TS 2068, with the label saying, I think it's TS 2048, which seems to confirm this theory. But in the photo that you published, I think there was another name. It was 2072 or something like that. And you said, okay, this was supposed to be the name. And I said, come on, now there's another name for the same computer.
So, right. So the 2048 was going to be a 16K RAM model, and the 72 was going to be a 48K RAM model.
Okay.
And at a certain point in time, they decided we're not going to do the 16K version. So that got dropped. And then the story goes is that Dan Ross, who, was sort of the public face of Timex Computer Corporation, mistakenly called it a 2068.
Okay.
And somebody points it out to him, after the fact, and says, yeah, I know, but it sounds better, so we're going to call it that.
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's the story that I've read in multiple locations.
Okay. No, yeah. So it seems to make sense, and with the press release that I got, I don't know from where.
Right,
and you're a nice picture.
No, you're absolutely correct, because from from the beginning of the announcement that they were going to make these things, we were told, there's going to be a 16K model. It's going to be called the 2048. There's going to be a 48K model. It's going to be called the 2072. And then I want to say midsummer is when Sue Mahoney? Sue Mahoney, who was the technical support manager, she was a user. She helped start the big user group in Boston, and then got hired by Timex and sort of became a spokesperson a little bit, at least within user groups. She announced at one of the Boston groups that the 48 was not going to happen. It was just going to be the 48K RAM machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the pieces all fit nicely. Okay. I was going to tell you another thing, which was no. Well, totally unrelated. Just one comment I remember. You guys know that one of the Timex CEOs was Portuguese.
Who was that?
Joe. He signs as Joe. Oh, come on. What's his name? Give me just 1 second. Joe. I'll tell you the story because the guy comes from Timex. Joe Santana.
Okay.
So this guy is called originally José Santos or Santana, I'm not sure. And he worked in the IBM team in Portugal. And then he was when Timex, when they started, let's say, phasing out in Portugal, he was invited or somehow to go to Timex USA, which he did. And in the meantime, he married a daughter of Fred Olsen. Okay, and then it was until 2015, probably 14, I don't know, but 20 something. He during a few years he was the CEO of Timex internationally, and he was the responsible, from what I read online, he was the responsible for the existence of a Timex museum in Waterbury. I think it was in Waterbury, yeah, which no longer exists anymore.
Right.
But he was the one creating it.
Wow.
And he was the one that opened the door. Opened the door. He gave me the email, and I've contacted the CEO of Timex once to basically explain to me what we were doing. I tried to get some kind of support letter, just saying, okay, this is important for our story. I'm not asking for any money or anything like that from them. And then the CEO ended over to some director, I don't know if it was a marketing director or whatever, I can check. And the fact is that we exchanged a lot of emails, but I never got anything more. Now, obviously, they don't know anything about all the things that happen in the meantime with Timex Portugal, all the paperwork, all of that. So one of these days I'm going to approach them again. But if you have any contacts with the people still related to the company, it's good to know.
I've done some digging. I'll share you with what I have. But I reached out to Timex corporate here in the United States, and my first response that I got back was, "We don't make computers." And I was like, "Yeah, I know you don't make computers. You did make computers." And the response I got back was, "Yeah, we don't know anything about that."
Yeah, no, I think that's common. I think that's the official thing. Now, I heard two stories. I heard the version that Timex doesn't want to hear about computers because they lost a lot of money. And I heard the version that when Timex decided to get away from the computers, it was because they had some offer to buy the distribution network or something, and they made a lot of money. I heard both of them. I don't know which one is true, to be honest. At the same time, I don't care. The only thing I need now is, to be very honest, I don't know what to do regarding disclosure of the documents. Now I'm in a tricky situation and I need to think what to do, because some of them are internal documents from them. And so obviously I don't want Timex to sponsor anything. I don't want them to put money on this. If they at least recognize this is part of their history, it would be nice, but right. I don't know if they want to do it or not.
Right.
At the same time, because I'm enlarging from the computers to other things, not a full Timex museum, but we do have some watches. For example, I don't know if you know, Timex Portugal did in the 70s watch to with the name and to sell and to dedicate it to Emerson Fittipaldi, the Formula One driver.
That's right.
Now,
Wow.
I have the pictures, original pictures of his visit to Timex in Portugal. I was given that. So now I had to buy the watch to have it. It's being repaired. Let's hope it gets okay. But so I have that one. I have the Beepware and the Data Link, because they were done, one with Motorola, the other one with Microsoft, and they were very advanced for the time. They are from 94, 95 or something. So just as an example of watches from Timex, of course. And there's another thing which I didn't mention, which is this. Many of the guys from the Timex team had their own businesses, of course. Some of them were involved in magazines, and then you have one magazine in Portugal showing technical details from Timex products, and then you start looking at the editor, and you start seeing, but this guy worked at Timex. Oh, now I know how he got the information. So that happened, but at the same time, I have some documentation and some devices very interesting, because one of the guys he did one thing which you guys don't know about, which is the TS1045. What is this? I have a prototype with a case, acrylic case, and all of that. I have the technical documentation. This was something that was presented to US, but was not approved to be developed. It's I don't know the technical details, but it's a fast loading mechanism. It's an interface, a fast loading interface to basically overcome some of the problems of the tape recorders. This is what was explained to me. I have the specs and all of that, so I can.
This was released though in Portugal, or
no, it was not released. Okay. I have the prototype. Because the guy that developed it was the one that gave it to me, and he gave me the prototype, which also had a very fancy case or cabinet. I don't know the word you guys use.
Yeah.
But he has this nice case, but which was a one-shot thing made in the Timex tool room, molding some acrylic thing. So we have that. Now, that guy was involved in a company in Portugal called Dixtronic. Dixtronic developed many things using Timex computers. I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. One of the biggest soccer teams in Portugal, in the stadium, they had this huge wall with letters, those announcement boards, you know. We're talking about 80 something, 84, 85, whatever, something around that. So it worked connected to TS1500 computers. And I have the keyboard that they use to program it. And I have the specifications of which character to send to have the certain letter on the panel. That's one thing. The other thing they did, they connected to, I think I have with the ZX Spectrum and with the TS2068, they developed this nice equipment to a news agency in Portugal. So basically it was a computer connected to some telex network to gather news from around the world that they would use in that news agency in the country, an important one. And the other example he gave me, and that one I have the prototypes, but honestly, I don't, well, he gave it to me. I need to go back to my notes, but I don't, they are not fancy to show, but they exist, which is they would feed TV signal in hotels, something like 70 hotel rooms with so TV sets there, receiving those welcome messages from a Spectrum or Timex computer. What he did explain to me was that it's impossible to pick the signal from one of these computers and try to split it across 70 devices. So they had to come up with some hardware, with some RGB outputs to basically extract a better quality signal that then they could propagate to everywhere.
Video amp, it sounds like, too.
Something like
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, Joao, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't know.
We usually do 2 hours.
Okay.
But I've got this on my schedule for 4 weeks from now. Do you want to join us again on Sunday?
As long as I can join you. Sometimes I may have some things happening, but yes, I'm very interested in being in touch with you guys. So if you're doing this effort of doing it in a time that I can do, yes, I'm okay.
So we've got a an American one that's on Monday, the first Monday of the month at 9 p.m. And then we'll do this one 2 weeks later on today's Sunday at 2 p.m. Okay. And we'll just hold that schedule, and
I can bring more people.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's easy. I'm seeing there's someone called Reis right now. Is that someone that you recognize?
Somebody.
It may be one of my friends. I don't know. I don't know if I invited Ricardo Reis.
Oh, I don't know who that is. It's just a first name. It looks like.
Yeah. In fact, it's Ricardo Reis.
Hola, Ricardo. How are you? So it's a good friend of mine, which is deeply involved in the FTD systems and the TT3000 and those kind of things. So we've been having some conversations. Mario Mureira, I think it's a friend of him. I recognize the name, but I don't think I know him in person.
Exactly. We don't know each other, but well, I have been here at least for the first time that this group had a meeting. But it was quite late and I didn't join since then. But since today it was a nice hour to be here, and I was gladly joining this awesome group again.
Thanks for joining us, Mario.
Mario, are you on Facebook or something? Is there a way that I can easily send you the calendar?
I usually receive the emails from the group.
Okay.
So,
good.
I'm there.
Okay, good.
So these guys are playing with, among other things, with one of my Timex terminals. It was not working, and Ricardo was able to repair it.
Oh my Lord.
So they are trying to explore it. But again, the idea is not, we have one that is not working, let's just repair it. No, the objective is totally different. The objective, and what I really want, is please document that, because it's not documented anywhere and we want to share it. One good thing is that I have a PCB without the component, so we can use it to redraw the circuit. So that's something we're going to do in the future, I think. And so there's a lot of things exciting, and if we could do many more, I would be very happy. The way I see it, the museum needs to be a facilitator of projects that want to grow, and at the same time challenge others to and give access to things that we may have that could be interesting. So that's the way I see it. The most important is the knowledge that we can gather for everyone.
Yeah, to me that's the big thing, is, like you said, documenting and getting the knowledge, getting it preserved, the information preserved.
Yes.
So that others can.
Guys, in 20 or 30 years, all of this will be lost if we don't do our job. So
that's right. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jacob, for joining us and showing us your dither paint.
If you haven't seen, I've been doing something else on it right now as well. On the little screen.
Yeah, nice. The RAM pack.
Love it.
So, and I did this one earlier. If you guys didn't see that as well, let's switch over to a different one. So I made like a little map kind of a deal.
Yeah.
To add to those that have been kind of buying some of the copies right now. I'll be trimming some of these out.
Nice.
So, and I just printed this one out. So I'll be doing a few more of these printouts.
Nice.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, thank you, everybody. And Joao, we'll be in touch. We'll see each other in 4 weeks. And the American guys, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If time allows.
Thank you.
Stuart, I will follow up with you. Sorry.
I'm sure. Delay. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, guys. Okay, bye-bye.